Hi guys, today we're going to go through the diffusion and osmosis assignment. So whenever you click on the tab, it'll open up this page here and it's going to say, please complete the Google document on diffusion and osmosis. I've also included this document as a PDF in case the Google Doc does not open for you. You need to email me your answers if you use the PDF, otherwise you can submit the Google Doc as normal. This will help to prepare you for the test on Thursday. Please use your notes and video for help. So our test is going to be coming up here soon. And a lot of the questions that you'll see in this document will show up on your test. So your Google Doc should open up right down here. It says this tool needs to be loaded in a new browser window. So you'll want to click on that and up should pop your Google Doc. If that isn't working, use the PDF version up here. You won't be able to write directly on it, so you'll have to have a Google Doc open next to you or maybe a piece of paper where you can write your answers down and you'll just submit it to me through email. So I'm going to use a Word document on mine just because it's easier for me to write on that than it is a Google Doc. I have to go back through and delete all my answers if I do it on a Google Doc. So the first question here says, label the three images below as iso, hyper, hypotonic with regard to the solution that the cell is placed in. So if we look at this solution here, we have cells. They look kind of skinny and thin, and they're not nice round circles anymore. You can also see that there's water leaving the cell. So if water is leaving the cell, there's no water coming into it, that is going to be a hypertonic solution because the cell is shrinking. For B, we have some nice round plump red blood cells, and you can see that there is water coming in and water going out. So we have an even exchange of water coming into and out of the cell. Whenever that happens, that's considered an isotonic solution. And the last one we have here, we have these nice round red plump cells, red blood cells again. And you can see water is only coming in. It is not going back out. And this cell up here actually looks like it's being burst apart. So this cell is going through cytolysis. Since the cell is getting bigger, that's going to be hypotonic. Remember, hippos are really big. Hippo kind of sounds like hypo, so it's big. All right, then we have a couple questions to go through and answer, and you're given a choice between two different words. Movement across the cell membrane that does not require energy is called active or passive. Active requires energy, passive does not, so we'll go with passive transport. The difference in the concentration of a substance across a space is called a concentration equilibrium or gradient. Equilibrium means that everything is completely equal, and that's what you're striving to get to whenever you are talking about concentration gradients. You can have a high to low gradient or a low to high. If there is a concentration gradient, substances will move from an area of high concentration to an area of equal or low. Well, you can't move to an area of equal concentration necessarily. You're going to be moving to an area of low concentration, hoping to make things equal on both sides in the end. The cell membrane is selectively permeable or impermeable. So selectively permeable means that it allows some things to get in. Impermeable means that nothing can get in. And our cell membrane does allow a few things to pass it. They have to be small and they have to be nonpolar, but it's not completely impermeable. So we're going to go with selectively permeable. Equilibrium or diffusion is the simplest type of passive transport. Equilibrium isn't a type of passive transport. You have three. You have diffusion, osmosis, and facilitated diffusion. So we'll go with diffusion on that one. The diffusion of water through a selectively permeable membrane is called osmosis or diffusion. Well, osmosis is the movement of water. Diffusion is the movement of small nonpolar molecules. Nonpolar means that they are not water. So we're going to have to go with osmosis on this one. I'm going to move my screen up some. Active transport uses proteins or phospholipids to move things across the cell membrane. Now, phospholipids make up the cell membrane, so it wouldn't be using phospholipids because phospholipids only go with passive transport. It's going to have to use a protein because those proteins can pump the solutes in or out. A solution that causes a cell to swell is called hyper or hypotonic. Well, hyper is getting smaller, hypo is getting bigger. We go back to my hypo-hippo example. I don't know if you're tired of me saying that yet or not. Facilitated diffusion uses proteins or phospholipids to move things across the cell membrane. We know phospholipids are the cell membrane. Facilitated means that you are assisting. So if it needs something to assist the diffusion, then it's going to need a protein to do so. Okay, make sure you get all those ones, and I'm going to move the screen up again. The process of taking material into the cell by infolding the cell membrane is called endocytosis or exocytosis. So for bringing things into the cell, that's going to be endocytosis. Into kind of sounds like endo. Exocytosis is exiting. In facilitated or active transport, membrane proteins help molecules across the membrane without the use of energy. So both of these use membrane proteins. So our hint here is going to be that we are not using energy. We know that active transport needs energy. Facilitated transport does not need energy. So we're going to go with facilitated transport. In diffusion, molecules, do they spread out or do they condense? If something is condensing, that means that they are getting grouped together. So we're going to go with they're spreading out. Whenever you're diffusing, you're trying to create more room around those particles. Think of spraying some type of cologne or body spray. Those molecules are going to spread out across the entire room so that everybody can smell it. That's how air fresheners work. The lipid bilayer describes a type of transport or the cell membrane. Well, we know that the cell membrane is made up of phospholipids, which are lipids, and there are two layers. So it's going to be describing the cell membrane. Facilitated diffusion moves substances down their concentration gradient with or without using the cell's energy. Diffusion, any type of diffusion, does not use energy, so it's going to be without energy. Facilitated diffusion moves substances from an area of blank concentration to an area of blank concentration. So since we just said in question 15 that we're not using energy, we're going to be going from an area of high concentration down to an area of low concentration. That's how things naturally want to go, from high to low. You want more space around yourself. You don't normally push yourself into an area that's already crammed and packed. Active transport moves substances from an area of blank concentration to an area of blank concentration. Active transport uses energy. It's going to be pushing things from a low concentration up to a high concentration. Active transport needs or does not need ATP in order to move molecules across the cell membrane. If it's active transport, that uses energy, so we're going to go with needs energy. Passive transport does not. We have 3 questions left that are kind of short answers. So what is the difference between active transport and passive transport? So if you go with active transport, well, it requires energy. And it goes from a low to a high concentration. And then I'm going to put passive transport below it. No energy required. And it goes from a high to a low concentration. Make sure you have both parts of that. One thing I've noticed is that a lot of students will go in and they'll only answer part of the question. If you just tell me what active transport does, that's great, but you're not actually answering the full question. You're not telling me how it's different from passive transport, so make sure you put both things in there. How are diffusion and osmosis similar? Well, one similarity that they share is that they are both passive transport. So no energy is required for them. And how are diffusion and osmosis different? So make sure you mention both of them separately again. Diffusion is going to move small non-polar molecules. And osmosis moves water through proteins in the membrane. I should probably put moves non-polar molecules directly through the membrane, because that's also a difference. What they move is a difference, and how they move it is a difference. And that's it for this assignment here. So please make sure that you are reviewing your notes. You'll see some of your vocab terms on there again. And I will check in with you guys later.